Ms. Powers, Administrator's Report, please.
Thank you. March 27th is the Recreation Department's annual Easter egg hunt at Halleck Park for kids 12 and under from noon until 3 p.m. With the completion of the city's fiscal year 2021 audit, the city's 21-22 budget process with department heads is starting to begin. We will hold budget meetings in the next few months, but start thinking of items for next year's budget. We are following proposed state legislation closely that may impact our city budget and will continue to monitor and take appropriate action as necessary. The new playground at Terra Hills Park is finished and open to the public. The playground was replaced following the stabilization project of the adjacent drainage way. Both projects received grant funding from the NRD and have helped to improve the area. Thank you to the NRD for their continued support in addressing natural resource issues and providing recreational opportunities. And finally, just a reminder that OPPD's Public Power with a Purpose online public meeting for phase 2 of the sarpy Southwest Transmission Project will be on March 30th. And you can let Kendra or me know if you want to attend and need any help registering. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Gaines, second by Councilman Stube. Do you have any proponents or opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. We have no ordinances for first or second reading. Item F1, Ordinance 1912, an ordinance to amend Chapter 205 zoning ordinance, Article 36, having to do with off-street parking. The applicant's the city of Papillion. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1912? Motion by Councilman Glover, second by Councilman Ingberg. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F2, Ordinance 1922, an ordinance to amend Section 16629 cutting curb of Article 3 curbs and gutters of Chapter 166 streets and sidewalk regulations of the Papillion Municipal Code, having to do with the adoption of regulations for driveway and on-street parking location, design and construction, the applicant's city of Papillion. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1922? Motion by Councilman Stube. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F3, Resolution R210052, a resolution to approve regulations for driveway and on-street parking location design and construction by resolution as authorized in Section 16629 of the Papillion Municipal Code as modified by Ordinance 1922. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R210052? Motion by Councilman Jaworski, second by Councilman Stube. Any proponents or opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F4, Ordinance 1923, an ordinance to amend Section 205-208C of Article 33 Supplemental Use Regulations of Chapter 205 Zoning Regulations having to do with accessory uses for civic use types, the applicant's city of Papillion. Motion to approve Ordinance 1923. Motion by Councilman Ingberg. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F5, Ordinance 1924, an ordinance to amend Table Number 1, Table 20538 Permitted Use Table of Article 4 Zoning District Regulations of the Papillion Municipal Code to allow multifamily residential in the CC Community Commercial District by special use permit. And 2, Section 20589 Site Regulations of Article 14 Community Commercial District to adopt site regulation for multifamily residential. The applicant is Collective Development in care of Mark Honaker. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 1924?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Sunday. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Any discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Ingberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F6, Resolution R210038, a resolution to purchase golf carts for use at Eagle Hills Golf Course and enter into a lease purchase agreement to finance the purchase of the golf carts. Motion to approve Resolution R210038. Motion by Councilman Gaines, second by Councilman Stube. Any proponents or opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Ingberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F7, Resolution R210043, a resolution to approve the lease of 166 GPS units for golf carts on the Terra Hills and Eagle Hills golf courses. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R210043? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Stube. Any proponents or opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Ingberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F8, Resolution R210041, a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve a preliminary plat for the property legally described as part of tax lot 10, section 35, township 14 north, range 11 east of the 6 PM, Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located southwest of South 150th Street and Shepherd Street. The applicant is Scannell Properties LLC, Highway 370 Industrial Park. It's a public hearing. I'll open it. Proponents, welcome.
Papillion with E&A Consulting Group at 10909 Mill Valley Road, Suite 100 in Omaha. With me today is Chris Miller from Scannell Properties, along with his team, to answer any questions you all might have. We're here to ask for approval of a preliminary plat and special use permit for a large project on a project roughly located at 150th and 370. It's a 251,000 square foot distribution center on about 47 acres. It'll include some truck and trailer storage on that project as well. Can we go to the site plan that we had submitted?
She's bringing it up. There you go. Miss Councilman Sunday, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
We've got three main access points on this site, and I don't have a pointer, and I don't know if that would do those much good, but to kind of talk through them here, Shepherd Street or 152nd. If you could point to that with your pointer, which is down to the south there. That is our employee entrance at that location for the employees that will work at this location. At 150th Street as well, and to the left is where the van parking would be located in that area. And then off of Gold Coast Road is where our truck and trailers will access. There are two checkpoints, one where the truck and trailers come into the facility and one where the van facility would come in. This is a 24-hour facility, 2 to 3 shifts at this location. At 150th Street, we have part of a project in Sarpy County that straightens out the access off of 370 into the project, part of that county project. And then there'll be a shared cost with our neighbor to the east on 150th Street as it heads all the way down towards Gold Coast. We've had a traffic impact study completed, and we have met all the suggested improvements on that traffic study with this submittal. The zoning is an existing light industrial zoning. We are not asking for a change of zone, so we do fit within this zone, and the special use permit is part of that process, as well as a preliminary plat. We were approved January 27th of this year by the Planning Commission of the vote to 7-1 or 7-0, excuse me. We had some conditions. We've addressed all those conditions this submittal. Our next step will be the final plat and subdivision agreement. That'll come before you once we get through this as well. So Mr. Miller and myself are available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponents? Do we have any opponents? We'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve resolution R 21-0041? Motion by Councilman Glover, second by Councilman Stube. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Related item F9, resolution R 21-0042, also a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve a large project special use permit for the property legally described as part of Lot 10, Section 35, Township 14 North, Range 11 east of the 6 p.m. Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located southwest of South 150th and Shepherd Street. Applicant is Scannell Properties LLC. It's open the public hearing. We'll carry the previous remarks over, but welcome. Thank you very much. Any other proponents? Any opponents? Close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve resolution R 21-0042? Motion by Councilman Ingberg, second by Councilman Jaworski. Any discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item F10, resolution R 21-0050, resolution to approve the receipt of deeds for real estate from the City of Papillion Municipal Facilities Corporation. Is there a motion to approve resolution R 21-0050? Motion by Councilman Jaworski, second by Councilman Glover. Any proponents or opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F11, resolution R 21-0051, a resolution to authorize the mayor to execute the SID number 339 sanitary sewer easement. Is there a motion to approve resolution R 21-0051? Motion by Councilman Stube, second by Councilman Jaworski. Do you have any proponents or opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F12, resolution R 21-0056, a resolution to approve a PGA tee time distribution agreement with Supreme Golf Inc. for use at Eagle Hills and Terra Hills golf courses. Is there a motion to approve resolution R 21-0056? Motion by Councilman Jaworski, second by Councilman Stube. Any proponents or opponents? Council discussion?
Is there someone, Mayor, is there someone that can explain this one to us?
Yep. Is Mr. Spoomer here? I'll invite Mr. Spoomer up, the golf director. Welcome, sir. Golf courses are being watered. A little bit of rain. Welcome. Did you hear the question? Councilman Sunday just wanted an explanation of what it is.
Basically, it's, we currently do not have any software that will allow our customers to book tee times through our website. So the only one that we're using right now is a company called Golf Now. They're probably the largest tee time provider in the United States. They're also expensive. It's costly to our customers because they have to pay a fee in order to be able to book a tee time at our places. So this Supreme Golf, PGA Supreme Golf, is backed by the PGA of America. It's a new tee time software coming out. The nice thing about it is basically all they're doing is charging us a flat fee per month. In order to be able to have access to our tee sheets, our customers can then go and book tee times through our websites or through their PGA website. And the fee is basically just $100 a month per golf course, per month. So it'll be basically $1,200 at each golf course. And the whole plan is this is a new tee time software. Gives us a chance to try it out. We're going to try it at both places. Hopefully, if it works the way we think it will work, we'll be able to slowly eliminate Golf Now, due to the cost, and hopefully we can transition over to this. So
That answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you bet. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarden, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Okay, next three, we're going to take slow and kind of methodical, so we're all on the same page of what we're doing. And I'll periodically look to Mr. Thielen to make sure my interpretation is correct. But we're heading into the fireworks section. We have two ordinances on the agenda, ordinance 1925, which is item F13, and ordinance 1926, which is item F14. Those are each proposing changes to our rules and regulations. And depending on the outcome of those, then we wrap up with F15, which is a resolution to approve the balance, to consider the balance of the requests of the actual permits that we did not address last time that were held over for 2 weeks. So we'll handle the ordinances one at a time. And want to be careful in making sure that you understand what you're voting on, because there could be a situation if we approve the first ordinance, then we go to address the second ordinance, and if it's approved, we now have a conflict, and it's the latest direction of the council is the one that would go forward. So in effect, if both 25 and 26 would be approved, the approval of 26 basically undid 25. So that's why we're going to go real slow and methodical to make sure we understand what we're working on. So the first one we're going to work on, item F13, ordinance 1925, an ordinance to amend Papillion Municipal Code, Chapter 117, to amend the number of allowable fireworks permits based on population and to create a scoring process for the selection of licensees. Quick summary of this one. Again, I know everybody's read their packets, but I want to make sure we're all on the right ordinance. So 1925, let me get the right one up. Bear with me 1 second, because I'm going to walk through the changes. So 117.11 is the first change, and that is the one that puts in right now, based on the last amendment we did, our number of allowed fireworks is 12. We went from 10 to 12. That's been approved. This one is putting in a formula based on population. So as the city grows, the number of permits would automatically increase. And based on the current numbers, if this is approved, the number would go to 13. But you can see in section 117.11A is the formula for the number of licenses. Section C then identifies the process for determining who gets licenses if we have too many. For this current year, the process would not change, and the change would be applicable in 2022 going forward. And that change is a scoring process. It would go to the F&A committee to make a recommendation based on a quantifiable score. That recommendation then comes to the city council. And just like planning commission and other things, F&A is just a recommendation. Council is still free to make their changes as long as they follow the scoring criteria. And so that's in section 2. And then I think that's the bulk of ordinance 1925. Any questions on what we're voting on with ordinance 1925? I'll look for a motion to approve ordinance 1925. Motion by Councilman Gaines. Second by Councilman Ingberg. Now, there have been a series of motions that we're aware of that council has communicated to staff. I'll take the ones that have been communicated to staff in the order we've got those, and we'll handle those. And then once those are done, if there's an additional motion that we're not aware of, we can handle it at that time. So the first motion to amend is number 1 in your packet. And that one that's being submitted is to add section 117.12G. And that's going to add language to clarify that whoever pulls the license has the authorized personnel to procure, set up, stock, restock, sell, and tear down the product on behalf of the applicant and the applicant's premise. So in effect, somebody holds a license, they can't sell or transfer that license. They've got to do the work. Is there a motion to amend according to number 1? Motion by Councilman Stube, second by Councilman Glover. Any discussion on the motion to amend? If not, please vote on the motion to amend. Oh, Mr. Mumgarde, go ahead. Can you turn your mic on? Did you? There you go.
Okay. This is going to be, as you explained, somewhat of a convoluted way of approaching. So I'm just going to lay out right now what I'm going to do. I'm going to vote for this amendment. This is proposed by Councilmember Stube. This is a good amendment. This solves a problem that has come from what I call the grandfather rights that we have given to 10 licenses now. That the license in and of itself has value. So whether they want to do it or not, they have to come in and get that license. And then they figure out what to do about it. Do they hire somebody else, et cetera? So this is a good amendment. I'm going to vote for it. But I am then going to make the third amendment, which will then eliminate the numbers that are found in council members Gaines's ordinance. Because I like what Mr. Stube's doing, but I cannot agree with what council member Gaines is doing.
And we do have that as a subsequent motion.
So we will vote on this first motion, and then we will go on to the next motion.
That's correct. And there's two versions of that one we'll deal with, and I'll explain those.
Okay. So I'm going to vote for this, and I'll vote for one of the other amendments, but I will then vote against the overall ordinance, because I think we ought to come back to the next ordinance that is on the list. And that's a better ordinance than this one. That's where I'm going.
Any other discussion on the motion to amend? Mr. Ingberg?
Well, first of all, I want to commend Councilmember Stube for writing that portion of his amendment, because it does fix the problem. And I would ask the mayor that rather than discuss what we're going to do 2 or 3, 10, 15 minutes from now, can we stay on the subject at hand? Because I'm afraid people are going to get confused about what they're voting for and what they're not. And right now, we're just voting on Mr. Stube. I won't go into what I'm going to vote on next or the next ordinance or anything. I'd rather do it piece by piece so everybody's clear what they vote on. So the only thing we're voting on right now is amendment. And when we get done with that, I wouldn't like to make a comment about the overall ordinance itself.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this motion? Please vote on the motion to amend.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
So the motion to amend passes. So ordinance 1925 is amended. 2 more that have been proposed. I want to explain these together because they do interplay and they just have a slight variation. In both cases, they eliminate the number of 12. In the first motion we're going to deal with, the variation is it eliminates basically the grandfather clause. The second version that we'll deal with after that eliminates the 12, but leaves the grandfather clause in. So that's the variation between the two. So the one we're on now is motion number 2 on your packet, which eliminates the number of 12 and eliminates the grandfather. Is that correct, Mr. Thielen?
Yes, generally that's correct.
Okay. Is that clear what this motion to amend is? So is there a motion to amend? You withdraw that motion? Okay. I don't hear any other motions and there's no second, so that one fails. So we'll go to the third one. The third one is a motion to eliminate the limit of 12, but leaves the grandfather language in that's currently in the ordinance. Is there a motion to amend? Yes. Motion by Councilman Mumgarde. Is there a second? second by Councilman Stube. Discussion. Mr. Ingberg. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I just saw your hand go up.
Well, no, I didn't want to really speak, but I did want to ask, does that mean that I could you read that amendment again? Because it leaves the grandfather, but it takes away 12. So what does that leave us if we approve it that way? Does that leave us just 10 back to what it used to be?
No, it leaves an unlimited number, and the licenses then it's determined based on what can be safely regulated by the city
Well,
agencies.
that's okay. Okay, got
So
it.
it's an unlimited number.
Unlimited number of licenses.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right.
So basically the market would determine.
We had a motion second for that, correct?
There is a motion, a
So we can
second, so we're in
comment on that
discussion.
now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't like the unlimited. I really like what Councilman Gage put together, the population, because it's based on finite numbers. The idea of having unlimited fireworks stands in Papillion bother me, and I think it bothers the citizens somewhat too, because you go back and you look at what people complain about. I think if we start adding, one year we have 15, then we have 20, the city of Omaha, I don't recall what they have, but I think they have like 25, I think. I don't know. Mr. Gage may know that number, or Amber might know that number, but I like it based on a finite number. What I worry about is if we leave it to the staff, they're already telling us whether it's safe by virtue of where they have the location and the criteria they require for the location to make sure it's safe. You know, for example, you can't put two in close proximity to each other and so forth. So you already do that. But on the other hand, I don't like the idea of just willy-nilly. We have, as many that want to do it. We're not in business as a government, of course, and I agree with Mr. Stube with this. We're not here to decide who makes money and who doesn't. That's not our job. But on the other hand, when we have a community the size of ours, and there's one pie out there for nonprofits, particularly to divide up, and we've 11 out of the 13, if we have 13 this year, 11 out of the 13 are nonprofits. When you start slicing up that pie, 15, 20 pieces, I'm concerned that some of the nonprofits might suffer. Should that be our responsibility? Perhaps not. But I also know from what I hear from nonprofits is this is their biggest fundraiser of the year. Now you can look at it and say, well, a capitalist in me would say survival of the fittest. Whoever makes it, who doesn't, doesn't. But I also like to keep it reasonable. So there's a chance that those that want to participate enter a marketplace where it's not so watered down that they don't feel it's worth the effort anymore.
Mr. Ingber, Mr. Gaines.
Microphone on. There we go. Okay, so just to let all the rest of the council members know is that after the meeting 4 weeks ago, we talked about making some changes to this ordinance. And it seems that this is an issue that comes up almost every year, is how many permits we should allow. If we allow 10 permits, but we have 13 applicants, how do we decide, who gets a permit, who doesn't? So the morning after the last meeting, I reached out to Amber, who I want to thank you for all the help that you gave me. And I got about 20 or 30 years of population data on the history of this fireworks ordinance. And I really try to look at a solid way to quantify how many permits, how we regulate how many permits we have each year. And so I looked at the population data back in 2010, and I looked at the population data today, and the number that we came up with was approximately 2,900 citizens per fireworks tent. And what I really wanted to do was have a way so that this issue doesn't have to come back before the council every year, so that we don't have, one group lobbying the council for a permit. We have a scoring system. This is the way that it's fair, and these permits grow as the city grows.
And not only that, but kind of echoing Councilman Ingberg's comments is that we're not looking to control businesses or who competes against who else, but I feel like it's irresponsible to pass an ordinance that opens the floodgates, that takes away money from these nonprofits that every single year go out and run these firework tents. Additionally, I think it's irresponsible to take away the money from the people that have been, providing the fireworks for these tents every single year. If we go from 12 permits to 20 permits and we open the floodgates, it's going to punish all these nonprofits. It's going to punish the people they're doing fireworks sales currently. And I just think that there has to be a way to quantify how many permits is right for our city so that it's safe and so that it's fair for the nonprofits and the businesses that are currently in the firework business now.
Mr. Mumgarde.
Well, first off, I'd like to correct a statement that was made describing my amendment. It was described as an unlimited number of licenses. No, that is not what this does. This limits the number of licenses to the maximum number of licenses that the city can safely regulate. That number will go up, will go down, depending upon the city's staff ability to regulate safely. So it will not be unlimited. It will be the standard that has been written into our ordinance for 29 plus years. That language has been there. And instead of following that language, we picked a number out of the air, 10, now 12. All I'm saying is my goal is twofold. One, let's follow this rational standard that has been in the ordinance for 29 plus years. And two, let's open up the system to allow new charitable groups to raise money by selling fireworks. Because the number that we allow each year will be left up to the good judgment of the staff and the council. And right now, we have decided by putting a number limit on it, we have decided, in the words of Councilmember Ingberg, who makes money and who does not. Because we have told anybody beyond the original 10 or 12 or whatever that number is, no, you're not going to make money. So all I want to do is quit playing what I call the numbers game and instead rely upon this flexible standard that really makes more sense than anything else we can come up with. Because really, why do we go through the process of limiting licenses other than to assure they can be regulated? So let's just use that standard. So picking a number out, we've had this since 1991. We've actually had the number 10 since 1991, as if our staff's ability to regulate has not improved over the last 29 years. If we stick with a number and continue to have the ordinance say, well, that's the number our staff can safely regulate, I think we're selling our staff short, because it's the same number they could regulate back in 1991. Surely they've gotten better than that. So, and I commend Councilmember Gaines for looking at the population ratio. I think, that was an idea that needed some exploration. But the problem I see is that then you come up with the ratio, and the ratio is as arbitrary as anything else that we've ever been following, 10, 12, or anything like that. So I'm just saying, don't sell the staff short. They've told us that currently, between 3 departments, they only spend 1 hour per application. And I'm saying, well, okay, we then get to decide, do we have the staff spend 16 hours, 17 hours, 12 hours? How much do we think our staff can do to safely regulate the licenses? That's all I'm saying in this amendment. Now, Clear back in January, when we issued the first group of licenses, and we issued 10 to the what's called the grandfathers, the people who are locked in, that Mr. Stubbe's amendment's taken care of. Well, I spoke out against giving it to Wellspring, the 10th, and I was, suggested that I was being unfair to Wellspring. Well, maybe I was, because they were counting on it too. But I'm saying here, if we keep the door shut to any of the new people and just say, oh, we're just going with the people who've established themselves, we're being unfair to the new people. We're not given charitable organizations that are going to do good things for the citizens of Papillion. We're not giving them a chance to prove they can do it and earn the money they need to do the good things. So I'm just saying, okay, let's eliminate that number and let's just use this flexible, safely regulate. In January, we had 6 groups walk away from here that didn't get that license. And I think that they should have been disgusted with us that we couldn't solve the problem. They should have been disgusted with us that we were slamming the door on them if we weren't going to solve the problem. So I'm offering this amendment simply to support those groups that want to get into the game and have no reason they can't be in the game. And, we're sitting here picking, it's kind of, we're saying, we'll let the market decide. Well, the market is deciding when they come in with the applications. And to pretend that we can come up with a better answer than these other 6 organizations can, I think we're way off. So that's why I've proposed this amendment. And basically, if this amendment gets passed, it wipes out the population ratio. If, I commend the work that's gone to it, but the population ratios leaves us where we're at. And that's going to come back every year, year after year after year. We're going to have to discuss, is that population ratio making any sense? So I suggest that we adopt my amendment.
Mr. Ingberg.
Have as nearly as long a comment as Councilman Mumgarde, just a couple quick points. First of all, we didn't slam the door on anybody back in January, and I'll tell you why. Because if you recall, we had an ordinance already in place. Those that submitted applications knew that our number of applicants available was 12. They knew that coming in here. We didn't change anything. What we did, which I don't think we should have ever done, and I expressed it at the time, is I don't think we should have tried to change the fireworks ordinance in the middle of our permitting season. I think that's what messed everything up. This, what we're dealing with tonight, should have been done a year ago. That being said, they knew what we had to work with that night. So we didn't slam any doors. The number never changed until it will maybe change tonight. It wasn't changed. Now, when you talk about regulating, it only takes an hour for the staff to regulate. You're only really talking about the paperwork, checking the location, make sure it's set up right. You got to understand there's a lot of difference, being a former police chief, there's a lot of difference in policing 13 fireworks stands as opposed to 25. That makes a big difference when you have a different number of stands that you need to be responsible for as a public servant, whether it's fire department or police department. So while you're correct, it is limited by the staff's judgment, which I don't know why we're turning over a judgment call, except it's easier for us. We can just say, oh, we had nothing to do with it. But the point is, we're turning it over to them, and you're right. It could be a finite number, but it's going to change from year to year, perhaps. And we could have a drastic swing in how many we have based on your amendment. The staff's going to decide what's safe for this community. And I just think it's a wiser, more logical, common sense step to tie it to our size. And that's it. Thanks.
Mr. Gaines.
So the question that I have, and I don't know who to address, if it's Amber but who makes this under this amendment? Who makes the determination of how many permits that we can safely have?
Well, basically staff, and it's pretty nebulous. Item 11711A would be changed to read, licenses for the retail sale of fireworks shall be limited to the maximum number of licenses that may be safely regulated by city agencies. So what is that number and who makes that? That's going to be an administration call. So most likely it's going to be the administrator, building and fire marshal and police chief, and probably fire chief is what I would assume. And that group would probably come and make that determination.
Okay, so
That'd be my interpretation of what's being passed. But Mr. Thielen, any comment on that?
Yes, I'd say that the city administrator and the city staff would make a recommendation. Ultimately, it'd be a decision for the city council as the final word.
And I think that's reinforced in item B, where it does come to the council.
okay, so then in theory, under Councilman Mumgard's, some of his comments, if we've been at 10, which the city thought they could safely regulate since 1991, if we're sitting here 29 or 30 years later, and we've grown 3 or 4 times, then we could safely manage 30 or 40 fireworks tents every year. And so going back to my original rationale is that if there's only so much money in the community for people to spend on fireworks. And right now it's split up between 10 or 12 or 13, or depending on what happens tonight. But at some point in time, it's not going to be profitable if there's 25 or 30 permits for the vendors to even waste their time, let alone for the nonprofit to go out and waste their time. Because and I think Councilman Engberg said it, if we're splitting up the pie into 20 pieces, there comes a point where it's just not profitable. It's just a waste of people's time. And I think that that's why we go back to a number that, yeah, we had 10 in 91 and we had 10 in 2010, but we take that number, and as the city grows, the firework permits grows, and the amount of money that these nonprofits have to make, each year remains generally the same. So it's still a profitable venture for them to come in and to the city council or to the city and apply for a permit, and it makes it worth their time.
Mr. Glover.
So I have a question on Councilman Gaines's.
Can you pull your microphone down? I just want to make sure Councilman Sunday can hear.
I have on Councilman Gaines's what he's proposed. How would we regulate how would we go to figure out how many permits should be awarded based on our population? And then how would that be determined? Would it be every year? Would it be every 10 years? Would it be every 30 like the last one? How would that work?
The population numbers, of course, every 10 years, we get the official census number that kind of resets everything. So in the 2020, 2030, 2040, we have the actual census. So that reestablishes. In the intermediate years, we do an estimation based on planning and building. We know how many lots have been platted, how many houses have been built. Working with school district and others, we know the general ratio of how many people in the apartments and the houses. So in between, we do a population estimate. And I think in the 5th year, we may actually bring MAPPA in to help with that a little bit, but it's an estimation until we hit the 10-year census. And we do that today.
So if we pass that ordinance, what is the expectation? Every 10 years?
No, we would look at the population estimate for that year and then determine does it need to be adjusted or not for that year.
So we would do that every year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And as I understand it, it includes the ETJ population.
That's correct.
Yes.
So the big change there would most likely be Well, no, I was going to say if we did an annexation, but that's already factored in because we get the ETJ. So, yeah. Any other questions or discussion on the motion to amend? Mr. Glover. Mr. Mumgarde.
I just wanted to clarify that the question about who makes the decision. I would agree with the city attorney, and it's incorrect to say the staff will make the decision. The staff will tell us what it takes to regulate. The staff will make a recommendation. And then the city council, for example, the staff will tell us how many hours they're going to have to devote to each application. And they will tell us what kind of problems are arising with regulation. And then the city council, the elected officials, us, hopefully we have some judgment, and hopefully we're willing to tell the staff, no, we don't agree with you. But then the council decides the number, for example, the number of hours that we feel should be justified in regulating fireworks.
Quick
And
clarification.
that can include police, that can include fire. Go
Just a
ahead.
just a quick clarification. The number of hours is not in the ordinance. It's just what can safely be regulated.
I'm saying that's an example of the evidence that would be used to determine safely regulate.
Yep.
Safely regulate would be what does it take to regulate? What steps are taken? Can we do it? Now, for example, we've said we can do it for 10 applications for 29 years. Now, I've been here only for a portion, on the council, only for a portion of that time, but I've seen significant increase in staff numbers, staff expertise, computerization, and to sit here and think we can only do what the staff could do 29 plus years ago. Well, that sells the staff short. With regard to Mr. Gaines's suggestion, well, okay, population may have some connection to the market for fireworks. The more people, the more places, the more people are going to buy fireworks. But the ratio that comes up 1 per 2950 is pulled out of the air just simply to say so that we don't increase the number. It has no relation to anything. And then the whole thing just focuses on the market. And I'm not sure why we would be focusing on the market as opposed to the city's ability to regulate.
Mr. Jaworski.
That concerns me about Mr. Gaines's ordinance is the point system. Who am I to say somebody should get 6 points because they're whoever they are? Or who am I to say that they're supposed to get 0 points? I don't like that. I don't think we should be involved in any way of scoring people. We don't score the garbage contractors. The garbage contractors apply, and it comes before us, and we say yes or no. This is no different. Why are we picking who gets a license? Or why are we scoring who gets a license? That's my problem with this ordinance. I like the population part of it, but I do not like.
Real quick point of clarification, because it raises a question in my mind. Motion number 3 that we're on, which removes the number, that motion does not remove the scoring system, does it? Or does it? I just want to make sure we're clear on the discussion that's occurring.
Yes, it does.
Okay, it does.
It
So
does
the
okay.
conversation's germane. Go ahead.
Okay, then that's my problem with this. I don't feel any of us should have to score anybody, because who are we to say somebody's better than somebody else? We don't know that.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Mr. Sunday.
I am opposed to Mr. Mumgarde's safely regulate standard amendment. I think mainly because I think it's an entirely subjective standard and finding, completely subjective. As staff members change, the opinions change. There's going to be no continuity to it necessarily. And it is completely subjective, not objective. And for that reason, I cannot support it.
Any
That's
other
all.
discussion? Mr. Gaines?
I just wanted to make one comment for Mr. Jaworski, is that I talked to several council members and there were other ways proposed of selecting who gets a permit and who doesn't over the amount that's allotted. And I also spoke with Mr. Thielen and we discussed the legality of some of those other ways. And that's what kind of how we got to the point system. I asked, so what other ways could we do this? And one of the things that other cities around the metro area, around the country do is they score it by point system because it's able to withstand legal challenges. And that's why originally I had a couple different ideas to select who would get a permit. But after speaking with the city attorney, I kind of went to the scoring system because that was the advice of the city attorney. So just wanted that for clarity.
Mr. Stubbe?
I'm trying to look at a way to try to make this as simple as possible. I agree with Mr. Mumgarde. We've been in this determining the number of permits for decades now. My original intent was to make sure that we have a provision within the ordinance that essentially says if you get a permit for a nonprofit, then that nonprofit should be performing that function to sell the fireworks. They shouldn't be sitting at home, sell it to somebody else and collect that revenue. From the standpoint of making a determination as far as whether it's 12 or 16, I don't know what a nonprofit is going to say from the perspective is that, are they making $1,200? Is that enough for them? Is it $1,500? Is that enough for them? Is it $2,000? Do they want to make $5,000? I don't know. That's a decision, in my opinion, that the nonprofit should be making. I agree. I think that the city administrator, the police chief, the fire chief, the fire marshal, all have the ability to sit down in a room and make a determination as far as what is the criteria to essentially establish what is safely regulated. It's just not handing a permit in front of them saying, yeah, I agree with this one. I think it can be managed. I think they have the ability to actually come up with some criteria. So I'm going to support the amendment that Mr. Mumgarde is coming up with, that we can look and say, we're going to issue permits based on what staff believes they can safely regulate. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, so again, so we know what we're voting on. It's motion number 3, which would remove the number. I say unlimited, but it's just because there's not a stated number. It would be the number that can be safely regulated. And that is how it's defined in the ordinance. And because there is a number, then it does come to the council to make the decision. So that's where the scoring criteria does fall out with this motion. Clear what you're voting on? Please vote.
Sunday,
No.
Mumgarde. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Stubbe. Engberg.
No.
3 yeas, 4 nays by Sunday, Gaines, Glover, and Engberg.
Motion fails. Are there any other motions? And just to reiterate where we're at, we have the original motion 1925, and that is then amended to allow the criteria that Mr. Stubbe was mentioning, where the permit holder is the one that has to be doing the work. They can't sell it. So that's what's currently on the table. Are there any other motions? Seeing none? Well, let me just clarify one thing. So if this passes, and we'll just talk about just this one, if this one passes, then based on current population numbers for this year, the number would be 13. Is that correct? Okay. So that is the number, Mr. Thielen.
And Mayor, maybe we should point out too, under state law, to pass this, we must have a majority of the number of votes, a majority of the number of members elected to the city council. So that is 5 votes.
So we do need 5 votes, even though there's 7 here.
Yes.
Okay.
And it does provide for the mayor to be able to add his vote if it's necessary to arrive at that majority.
Yep. Yes, Mr. Stubbe.
So this potential ordinance change would increase the number from 12 to 13.
For all practical purposes.
Okay. And then it would also then, because we have 16 applications, it would require going through that process of establishing points, correct? Which then has to go back to the committee?
No.
It will not.
The point system, as it's written in the ordinance that you're going to be voting on, is effective with 2022. So the current one, the number would be 13, but you would be left with the current decision process, which is really then you determine of the 6, which 3 get them. Unless, and I don't want to steer the discussion, but I really want to make sure people understand what they're doing. Unless there's a motion to amend to temporarily just this year increase it to 16. And I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but again, I want to make sure that we're methodically working through this, thinking of the ramifications. Item 15 on the agenda is the resolution to approve the permits. There are 6 that are left, and ordinance 1925 as it is makes the number 13. So when you get to F15, if this passes, if F14 does not pass, then when we get to F15, the question will be of those 6, which 3 get the permit this year? Unless there's an amendment. And that's why I want to very slowly work through this so we understand where we're going and what the ramifications are. Is there any other motions? Mr. Mumgarde.
Okay, I'm thinking through this. I've done the math to make the amendment that would allow it to be 16 applications this year, even using a population figure. And I think it's 1 per 2,300, but I'll turn it back to, would somebody confirm that? I don't want to make that amendment now, but, you know, I'm sorry, I'm thinking ahead. If this fails and everything else fails, well, then somebody can make a motion to reconsider and bring one of those back up and get it done so that all 16 applications can be granted this year. So I would ask the staff or somebody to please confirm if 1 per 2,300 ratio, as arbitrary as it is,
Well, the current,
would allow 16.
as I do the math, and then we'll have staff double check it if I get what you're saying. So the current ratio in the ordinance as it's on the floor is 1 per 2,250. And that,
I think it's
21, you're right,
2950, I believe.
29. I had a different number in my head that I was using. I'll
Okay.
let staff answer.
So the example in the ordinance for 117-11A is actually this year. So it's based off the population of 37,200, and that'd be 1 permit per 2,950 people.
Population number was what?
37,200.
Sure.
37,200?
That would be 1 permit. That would be 12 permits for that population. If you want to have 16 permits for that population, I believe you have to go down to the ratio about 1 every 2,300.
23, 25, yeah.
You know, and as I've said, I don't like the population ratio, but if we're going to use the population ratio, let's at least do it in a way that'll get 16 people out there. My preference would be, you know, to move on, to defeat this and move on to Bob Stubbe's and pass that with my amendment and get to the same point.
So with that discussion, I guess I'll ask, are there any further motions to amend?
I would offer an amendment for just this year to open it to the 16 until this, or I guess otherwise have the amendment or have the ordinance be effective right away, either way, but
Okay, so.
so there's some clarity.
So if I hear appropriately, so just like with the scoring's not in effect until 2022. The motion that you're making would be for this season, 2021, make it 16. And then in 2022, the population as currently in the ordinance goes in.
All those that have already applied, which happens to be 16, we're not choosing that number 16.
Do you want to make that motion?
Sure.
Is there a second? Second by Glover. Is there any discussion on that point? So the motion on the table to amend would make it 16 for this year. Seeing no discussion, Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. Jaworski, I didn't see your light.
Well, it's not really about the amendment. It's more about when we first started this about 6 o'clock, when we got to F13. You said if F13 passes, it supersedes F14, right? Or if
F14 passes, it'll supersede what we just did on F13.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Mumgarde.
Okay, well, I will vote for the amendment, and then I'm going to vote against the ordinance, because if we're going to use the population, well, at least use a population that, an arbitrary population ratio that'll let the 16 this year get in the game. But then I'll vote against the arbitrary population ratio.
Mr. Glover.
So, I would be in favor of the 16 this year. Give us an opportunity to see what 16 would do. And if it works and it works well, we can always come back at a later date, another year, and change it. But to me, I think allowing the 16 at this point gives everyone a chance to see how easy it is or how hard it is to sell fireworks in Papillion. I think people are going to find out that it's a lot of work, and maybe as we've talked tonight, there won't be as much money available if we have more numbers, and the numbers would probably end up going back to 12 or 13 anyway. So I would be in favor of passing this ordinance just to see what it possibly could do.
Mr. Jaworski.
Okay, Mayor, clear something up for me. Mr. Sunday made the motion to amend for the 16. What's F15 for? Let's say F13 gets voted down. Let's say F14 gets voted in, and let's say F15 gets voted in. Isn't that the same thing? Or what are we doing?
Well,
See, this is why we shouldn't be involved in this, and the staff should just do this, because this is ridiculous.
F15 is separate from 13 and 14.
Yes.
13 and 14 are set in the ordinance of how many and what's the process. And then once the ordinance is established, now we'll deal with 15. That says, what do we do with the actual applications?
Okay.
Mr. Stubbe.
Thank you. So I agree with the proposed change with regard to allowing 16. I think we got 16 requests for selling fireworks. I think we should give 16 this year. My other comment will be that if we give 16 permits, there's no selling of your permit to somebody else. You should be the one doing it. That's been my plan from the very beginning. I'm going to muddy the waters a little bit because I'm not going to support Mr. Gaines' proposed amendment. I'm going to vote against that. And I think we could clear this up by voting against 13, moving to 14, and making Mr. Sunday's amendment on number 14, which essentially does what
16.
I have stated.
16.
14.
Mr. Mr. Sunday's is to
Item
go to.
14.
Oh, item 14. I'm
Yes,
with you. I
sorry.
thought you were talking number 14.
No.
So I said we're going slow and methodical.
We're 16, we got 16 applications, we should issue 16 permits. You can't sell it. That's my intent. That's what I would like to do. And again, if I look at, if I got my way, I'd vote against 13, which I plan to do. I support 14 and I would amend that to issue 16 permits.
Mr. Thielen.
Just one last word before we vote on the motion. Since if this motion passes, we would have to, after the fact, take an oral motion and translate that into writing to add into the code. I just want to clarify what we're doing with the motion. In this motion, we'll be saying that the ratio formula that is being proposed in 117-11A will not take effect until 2022.
That's correct.
And until then,
For 2021, the maximum number would go to 16.
16.
Yep.
Okay.
That is correct.
So those are the two elements of that motion. And that's what we would write into the code if this motion is passed and the ordinance is passed.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion, Mr. Ingberg?
Person about the only person around the table, I guess, is not an attorney, but how about some common sense? Why don't we vote on up or down 1925? Then we vote up or down on 1926. Then we go to number 15, where we actually grant permits, whether it's 13 or 14 or 15 or whatever. Going into item number 15, let's assume ordinance 1925 passes. That uses the ratio of Mr. Gaines, which I like, and that would make it 13 for this year. Okay, we go on to the next one. If it gets passed, we make the change again. If it doesn't, 1925 continues down to number 15. When we get there, if 1925 passes preceding that, giving 13 permits for this year, anybody around this table could say for this 1 year, because we started this goofy process in the middle of fireworks permitting season, anybody around this table could say, I want to amend it for 1 year only this year to 16. And you could even add the remark, even though it's already going to be in place from 1925, you can also add remark that it's not transferable. To your point, Mr. Stubbe, instead of jockeying around and oral this and oral that, and then we got to go back to this one. Then we're going to reconsider, and let's just go through this and vote on 1925 up or down, 1926 up or down, and then decide what number you want to have for this 1 year and 1 year only. If you want to keep it at 13, if that gets passed, great. If you don't, make a motion to increase to 16 and do that for 1 year.
I'm not an attorney either, so that's why I want to test with Mr. Thielen. But if we don't change the 16 on this ordinance, and then we get to item F15, which is a resolution, I don't believe we could amend it to 16 because the resolution has to follow the ordinance, and the ordinance says 13. Which is why I think Mr. Sunday's saying we need to make the 1 year change within the ordinance, so then the resolution can follow that. Is that right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Because the ordinance is the law, the resolution is the execution of it.
The number we choose, we can't get to the number that we choose in the resolution until we determine that number either in ordinance 1925 or 1926.
And the resolution could not override the ordinance, which is why I think it has to be addressed. Mr. Sunday's motion is appropriate now because then it makes the 1 year change within the ordinance, so then the resolution can follow that. I'm not an attorney either, but that's why I kept looking at Mr. Thielen to see if that's right. Mr. Jaworski.
So with Mr. Sunday's amendment, that passes. And then let's say the F13 doesn't pass, that 6 carries over to F14?
No, the motion on the floor right now is only looking to amend 1925. If the motion passes, we now have an ordinance that's been amended We vote that ordinance up or down. If it passes, then we'll go on and deal with the next ordinance. If it fails, all the motions we've now passed and all the motions we've discussed and passed die with the ordinance because they're specific to that ordinance. We'll start the discussion over then when we get to ordinance 1926. So the discussion, right, the motion on the table right now is to increase it just this year for 16 within ordinance 1925. Any other discussion? Please vote on the motion to amend to just this year to 16.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Stube. Engberg. 6 yeas, 1 nay by Jaworski.
So the motion to amend passes. So now we have ordinance 1925 with 2 motions to amend. One of them is the language to disallow the transfer and sale of licenses because you have to attest that you're doing the work. And the second one is just for this year, the number is 16. Any other motions? Mr. Mumgarde.
Clarify, if all that we've done is amend the ordinance, doesn't it still have all that population ratio in it? Doesn't it still have that
Yes,
number?
which takes effect in 2022. So the scoring and the population thresholds take effect in 2022 based on the
Okay.
motions that have now been passed. So just for this year, we're pretty much under the old ordinance with the language that you can't sell or transfer, and we moved to 16. And then for next season, it's the scoring and it's the population is the ordinance that's on the floor. Any other discussion on the motion as amended? Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Stube. Engberg. 4 yeas, 3 nays by Mumgarde, Jaworski, and Stube.
So we have a majority, but not a majority of the council, so the motion would fail. So we're up to ordinance 1926. An ordinance to amend Papillion Municipal Code, Chapter 117, to provide for clarification of who can perform work related to the issuance of a fireworks permit and to require an affidavit stating compliance. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 1926? Motion by Councilman Stube, second by Councilman Glover. Any discussion on this one? Please vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mumgarde.
Yes, I want to make an amendment. Well, we've been through it before. It was on there all the way through. You knew it was coming. What's listed as my third motion to amend, which puts us back to safely regulated, grandfather rights.
Can we handle that one
And
after the
continues
next
on.
motion? Because the next one's more technical. I don't think it'll take very long.
Now, well, you asked for a vote on the ordinance.
I know. So, and your reminder to do a motion reminded me now we got to deal with motions. So I'm not going to ask for the vote,
Okay,
but we have a motion and a
as
second.
long as you've corrected yourself, I'll stand
corrected me.
aside. Thank
So
you.
we have a motion and a second to add that language. Motion number 1 in this case adds, or the wholesaler can do the work. And that was in the previous one because we know a lot of the wholesalers, they're buying, the not-for-profit is buying the service of set up the tent, get the point of sale system, put the fireworks in. So motion number 1 just adds the wholesaler to the authorized people. Is there a motion for motion number 1? Motion by Stube. Second by Mumgarde. Any discussion on that point? Please vote on that motion to amend.
Sunday,
Yes.
Mumgarde. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Stube. Engberg. 7 yeas, 0 nays.
So at this point, we have the current ordinance of 12. This ordinance adds the language that you can't sell or transfer, that you've got to do the work. Then there's been 2 proposed motions that have come to the staff. It's somewhat of a repeat of the previous discussion. They both were removing the number of 12. One of them was proposing eliminating the grandfather, the other one was not. So in the packet, the one that's noted motion number 2 eliminated the number of 12 and eliminated the grandfather. Say that again.
I would withdraw
Okay.
what's labeled as second motion to amend.
Which, and if
Which-
nobody else wants to make that motion, and I do think it was you that mentioned staff, so it's appropriate that that one's withdrawn. That leaves motion number 3, which is the one that removes the limit of 12 and leaves the grandfather in place. Is there a motion to approve or motion to amend number 3? Correct. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Stube. So discussion on the topic of removing the number of 12. And then after that one, if there's any other motions, we'll take those up. Mr. Mumgarde.
Okay, I'll try to be simple. Okay, we pass this ordinance with this amendment, and we can grant all 16 applications. We don't need to amend anything and list 16.
Any other discussion? Miss- Can you turn your microphone on, please?
This wipes out the
Thank you.
the only real difference is, at least at this point, is it wipes out Mr. Gaines' population ratio element, correct?
No, it wipes out the current number of 12 because Mr. Gaines's population did not pass. So what we're left with now is the existing ordinance that has the number of 12. This wipes that out.
But it reverts to what, back to the staff doing inspections?
However, whatever city can safely regulate.
Okay.
That's correct.
We're
Any
just
other-
voting on the amendment right now.
Just on the motion to amend. That is correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion? So a yes vote would revert it to the language of whatever can be safely regulated, removing the number of 12. Please vote.
Sunday,
No,
Mumgarde. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Stube. Ingberg.
No.
4 yeas, 3 nays by Sunday, Gaines, and Ingberg.
Motion to amend fails, so we're left now still with ordinance 1926, which leaves the language in place. Are there any other motions? So the number is still 12. The language is in there. So all's ordinance 1926 is doing at this point is adding the language of you can't sell or transfer your permit. It's not changing the numbers at this point in time. Mr. Stube.
Yes, would this be the appropriate time to make a motion to increase it to 16?
Yes. And then the only question would be, is that permanently or just this year? Just for clarification, because we've had discussion both ways. I just want to make sure we're clear on what the intent is.
The intent would be only for this year.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend for just this year to 16. Is there a second on that motion?
second,
Second by Sunday. Discussion. Please vote. And again, just again, a yes would change it from 12 to 16 just for this year. And if there's no other motions, it would revert to 12 next year.
Sunday,
yes,
Mumgarde. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Stube. Ingberg.
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 nay by Gaines.
Motion passes. So ordinance 1926 now has the language that you can't sell or transfer. And the number for just this year goes from 12 to 16. Are there any other motions to amend? Please vote.
Oh,
That motion passed. It was 5 yes. Is that correct?
it was.
The motion
6.
to amend,
6 yes.
6 yes.
And we already have a motion and a second on the table to approve the
That's
ordinance.
correct. So now we're voting on the motion as amended. Mr. Mumgarde, did you have another? So we have discussion on the motion as amended. Mr. Gaines.
So there's going to be currently the current ordinance that is in place. The only changes that are being made to it is you cannot sell your license. And now that last amendment passed, that it temporarily raises the number to 16 for 1 year.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Please vote.
Sunday,
No,
Mumgarde. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Stube. Engberg. 5 yeas, 2 nays by Sunday and Gaines.
Motion passes. So now we're on to item F15, a resolution to approve issuance of the remaining 2021 summer fireworks permits. Is there a motion to approve resolution? I missed the motion. Mr. Stube, second by Mr. Jaworski. We do need a motion to amend this one. And the reason is if we grant these tonight, it is still under the old ordinance because ordinances take 15 days to take effect. So we need a motion to amend resolution R210049 to go into effect upon the effective date of the previously approved ordinance, which is 1926 as amended. Is there a motion to amend? Motion by Councilman Jaworski, second by Councilman Stube. Any discussion on that? Please vote.
Sunday,
yes,
Mumgarde. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Stube. Engberg. 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion, so the ordinance, the resolution is amended. So do we have so we need to list them in the amendment okay, let me get the names. Make sure I got them. Oh, I've got them here. So now we need a motion to amend to actually insert the names of the ones that are being approved unless you want to handle them one by one. If you don't want to do them one by one, is there a motion to amend resolution R210049 to approve the issuance of the 2021 summer fireworks permits to First Lutheran Church, Fraternal Order of Eagles 4029, Monarch Athletic Booster Club, Papillion Vista South Legion Baseball Club, Papillion South Titan Band Boosters, and Titan Defenders Booster Club? Motion by Councilman Jaworski, second by Councilman Mumgarde. Any discussion on that? Mr. Mumgarde.
I just want to tell all the people, make sure everybody understands that applied this year, you're going to get your permit to sell fireworks this year. But we're still playing the numbers game. We don't know what next year brings. If there are 17, 18, 19 applications next year, we will go through this again because we could not get 5 votes. That's the way it works.
Is there any other discussion on this motion to amend? Please vote.
Sunday,
yes,
Mumgarde. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Stube. Engberg. 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Any other discussion? Please vote on the resolution as amended twice.
Sunday,
yes,
Mumgarde. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Stube. Engberg. 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. It's all the regular agenda items. I think the only committee that met was tonight, the Audit Ad Hoc Committee. Is there a report out from that? Mr. Sunday.
Mayor, I was just going to report that we heard the results of the audit from Bergen KDV's representative, Jody Woodward, and the council heard the same thing. So I don't know that I really have anything more than that to report.
You're the chairman?
Oh, am I? Yes, I think I am.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's because I wasn't in the room.
Appreciate that. Any comments from the floor? Yes. If we need to come up, if you'd state your name for the record. Welcome.
I just want to make a quick comment about the 16 applications going through. because the state of Nebraska, fire marshal indicates that you have to be in the city limits to run a fireworks stand. I don't think there's enough space that has been annexed in the city for 16 stands. So.
Thank you. Any other comments? Again, if you'd state your name for the record.
101 Somerset Drive. I just want to take some time to thank the Papillion Police. They've been doing a great job on Cornhusker Road, getting those speeders knocked down. That road's getting really dangerous. We've noticed a lot of red light runners. We've had a few accidents there with some T-bones, but I think the police are doing an excellent job right now trying to get that taken control.
Appreciate that, and we'll make sure they get that. Thank you. Any other comments from the floor? Council comments? Seeing none?
Mayor,
Yes,
I,
Mr. Glover.
quick comment. Explain to me the system that went to the golf courses on the golf carts,
So the ones that were approved tonight?
yeah, I should have asked that earlier.
So we did a couple of things with golf. One was securing some new golf carts.
Yeah.
A golf cart generally has about a 5-year life, so we secured some new ones to replenish that inventory. GPS was added in there, so that was one of the other ones. And then the other one was on tee times. We're using I think it's more for the metro area or tourism, but it's there's an existing system that's antiquated and expensive. The one Mr. Spoomer brought forward was one that is actually supported and promoted by the PGA. So it's more nationwide known. And in addition to it being known and supported by the PGA, it's a subscription base that's only a certain amount of money per month. And so we have a known fixed cost, and it's a lot. It'll be, once we can sunset the other system, it'll be a lot cheaper than that one. So it's a reservation system. So going online. So you're sitting down in Florida and know you're coming up to Papillion and it's going to be a nice weekend and you want to make your tee time, you can go onto this PGA system and make your reservation.
So,
So come up from Florida and come golf.
so will that help the GPS help Mr. Jaworski when he gets lost on the golf course?
I don't know if much will help Mr. Jaworski on the golf course.
Thank you.
Any other council comments? Mr. Stubbe.
Glover wasn't going to do that. I was going to do it because there's no question that having GPS on the carts allows for speed of play, and it would definitely keep Mr. Jaworski an eye on his golf ball. So.
No, it'll keep me on the course.
Oh, okay.
It keeps me on the course.
It is a good time, I think, to thank Mr. Spoomer for all the work he does at the golf course. We probably have the best municipal course in the state. So just thank you for everything you do there. Thanks for the council's support. And I know there's been discussion in F&A about restarting the golf ad hoc committee that we had put in place 7 or 8 years ago, and then we moved away from it. Putting that in place so we can stay on top of a little bit some of the capital improvement needs and the rates, so we don't address them every 3 to 4 years. We can actually kind of keep an eye on every year, and so we'll be doing that. So thanks for that recommendation.
I think that's more to keep the pressure off Rob. He's got enough on the way it is.
I think it does show the council support. You're exactly right. Just from the last couple of weeks, we're continuing the weekly meetings with the health department on COVID every Thursday. I think this week, though, we're going to make a recommendation that those wind down to more of an as needed. Things seem to be stabilizing and we're pretty much just getting a numbers report out each week. So we'll probably wind that down unless there's a need to have it. We continue each week now that the legislature's in session to have a call with the United Cities to stay up with what's happening that week in the legislature. All of the senators, as of late last week, should have established their priority bill. I think all of the committees have established their priority bills. The only one I think is waiting is for the speaker to declare what his priorities are. I don't know his deadline, but I'm going to assume that's maybe this week or early next week that those will be known. And once the priorities are established, then we'll really know what they're going to deal with on the floor. Again, the ones that we're watching closely tend to be the ones around police reform and property tax reform are the ones we're watching closely. But if there's any that are being established as a priority that you care about, make sure we're aware of that so we can be monitoring that very closely. We had another meeting. No, that we already reported on that last week, the meeting with the post office, where we're making some slow incremental changes on the zip codes that are associated with Papillion. And we're doing a test on that latest change. So we'll report back to you then. The wastewater agency met. Nothing major except for we did approve an agreement for a connection of a new development to the in the Springfield jurisdiction on the parcel immediately south of Facebook. So if people have heard of Project Gemini, that project was approved by the wastewater agency. So that's the parcel immediately south of Facebook. That does cross our boundary agreement. So that's in Springfield's jurisdiction, not ours. Those are the major things. Again, just a couple of the reminders that were already mentioned. March 27th is the Easter egg hunt. It's we're having it this year. It's being changed a little bit because of COVID, but that is still being held. So thank the rec department for that. April 19th to the 25th is spring cleanup. Again, we're changing that slightly because of COVID. The staff will not be helping unload like we traditionally do, but the cleanup will be open. And then just a big thanks to Jeff Thompson. You and your crew, what you did for Mark Freeze, that was tremendous. If people didn't see the news reports or some of the video, Jeff coordinated basically public works, parks, police, fire, brought in La Vista and Sarpy County Public Works to basically get all the public works vehicles out and do a funeral procession for Mark Freeze. It basically escorted his family from his house on Halleck Street up to the funeral home on Harrison. And so had a very long procession up 84th Street through Papillion and La Vista with the police escort. And there were a lot of people standing outside honoring Mark. Just general citizens knew it was occurring, were standing out. So Jeff, thank you for doing that. It was pretty impressive. And the public support of that was incredible. Any other comments from the council? Motion to adjourn? Motion by Glover? Second by Gaines. This is not amendable. Please vote.
Sunday,
Yes.
Baumgart, Gaines, Glover, Jaworski, Stube, Engberg, 7 yeas, 0 nays.
We are adjourned.